Assuming everyone's ready, we'll get going. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our session on translating your learning use case into an effective VR experience. I'm Ben Bout, the CEO at Facilitate, joined by Philip Saylor, our Chief Experience Officer.
Hello.
We're here today really talking about the subject of taking a use case and working it into an effective VR experience that solves an underlying learning problem. We want to talk about this for a few reasons. Over the past 6 years, we've spoken with hundreds of learning designers, educators, trainers about this technology. And it really is unequivocally clear to nearly all of these individuals that VR has a significant role to play in their organisations' learning and training programs. However, it's also very clear to us that many are struggling to navigate this new technology that really represents a new paradigm in learning. So we feel, it's an important role that we have to play in helping to simplify the decisions learning creators need to make on their way to successfully adopting VR as a learning medium. And that really is our goal today. Next slide, thanks. So today, we'll quickly introduce ourselves before we look at the rationale that supports VR as an impactful learning technology. We'll then describe the three core elements that need to be considered when determining the structure of your VR learning solution. And after that, we'll introduce our soon-to-be released guidance tool that has been designed to really help you cover some of the key questions that will assist to contextualize your organization's circumstance to best structure your VR learning solution. And we'll run through an example of a customer of ours and how these questions have been applied to their situation. And then finally, we can go into Q&A. So next slide, thanks. Firstly, who are we? We're a Perth-based software company that is solely focused on achieving our mission to positively impact over 1 billion lives through better learning and training experiences. And the way that we do this is through our Facilitate Immersive Learning Creation Suite that empowers anyone, so learning designers, educators, trainers, SMEs, to create their own custom immersive learning experiences. The platform's tools enable these people that don't have software development skills or 3D design skills to create their own content via our simple-to-use tools for creation and soon this inbuilt guidance tool as well. So head to our website at facilitate.tech if you're interested in learning more or running a free trial. So that's enough of the spiel. We thought we'd start with a poll really to gauge everyone's level of experience with using VR within a learning context. So I'll just launch this poll now. If you don't mind, that's come up?
Yep, it's come up, yep.
Yeah, great.
I'm hoping we get most people in the middle bit here because if everyone's in the bottom one, then it may be a little bit basic, and everyone's in the top one, then we might need to simplify it a bit. But we can do that as we go anyway. So, it's looking good.
It is. It looks like basically everyone so far is it's falling in that middle ground. So that's fantastic.
I've got a couple in the more advanced one. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yep.
Oh, that's good.
All right, cool. Let's in that poll then. Moving on to the next slide. Next thing we thought would be of value is to put into context where VR fits into the whole learning ecosystem. So starting with live coaching and training, although in-person facilitated training can be incredibly powerful because of the costs and logistics involved of bringing workers together with an SME, in particular when workers are remote, these experiences are often occurring too rarely and definitely unscalable to deliver long-term skills and knowledge development opportunities to a large volume of learners. So moving on to the digital solutions or e-learning and video conferencing, really, throughout the past 2 years, these two mediums have made significant inroads to becoming ubiquitous in all organisations. The benefits of dialing in for a live VC session or accessing e-learning courses where and whenever are significant to increase equity of learning opportunities. However, with this greater exposure, clearly the limitations of these technologies have become increasingly apparent. So these experiences can be relatively passive, not always, but often, and sometimes quite disengaging, which can result in very low retention levels of what's actually being taught. So there's also a limitation of the extent that learners can be required to actually put their knowledge and skills into relevant and realistic practice with these technologies as well. So that's a good segue to start talking about VR. So you can see that we've mapped 3 types of VR content here. So custom created VR content, off the shelf or licensable VR content, and self-authored VR content via creation platforms. So without going into too much detail regarding the nuances of these options, because Philip will be covering this in further detail, really there are certain trade-offs with all these different options. The custom VR solutions can be incredibly effective given the high level of contextual specificity that can be achieved. However, there's often significant cost that goes into these projects. Organisations can either develop their own internal team or work with a development agency. So for organisations with large budgets dedicated purely to VR training and that don't need to rapidly test, adapt or update learning content, then this is a fantastic option for them. However, there is a growing availability off the shelf or pre-made VR learning content that can provide cost-effective path to accessing high quality and impactful specialized content. However, it does come at the cost of being limited to the way that the content was created by the original developers, some of which may provide elements of customizability, but generally speaking, this type of content is found to be more appropriate in areas where a high degree of organizational context isn't required. So a good example might be, something like manual handling that has universal rules of best practice to follow. And the third category, which is really where our platform Facilitate fits in, is authoring platforms that allow you to create your own custom learning materials. So main trade-off with this option, generally speaking, is that types of content you can create on your own without the specialist VR software development skills will be more limited than working with a development agency. However, the tools in these platforms built specifically for the non-developers, so those learning designers, trainers, etc., they're becoming more and more powerful, enabling the speedy, flexible, and impactful content development that wasn't previously possible. So that's as quick as possible overview of where VR fits into the whole ecosystem. So next slide, thanks. So there's a number of reasons that make VR a unique technology for learning, but the core elements that really stick out and deliver value underpin our ability to create experiences more easily and affordably. And by experiences, we mean providing more realistic and practical learning activities that tap into really how our brains have been trained over a very long period of time to believe what we see and hear and comprehend the feelings we develop when in a state of being present within a context, virtual or real. So value is further solidified by giving people the opportunity to go through these interactions and receive feedback, not only once, but through repetitive practice. So next slide, thanks. So next, Philip will take you through the main elements that are needed to unlock this value within your organisation. But I believe before we jump into that, we had another poll.
Yeah, just quickly before we jump into the poll, Tessa, can we just go back one slide? I just want to make one point here. Just on the opportunity to practice there, I've got in brackets creation. So just for the learning designers out there from a pedagogical or andragogical perspective, if you're thinking about Bloom's taxonomy of learning, obviously, at the pinnacle is stuff like creation, evaluation. So that, in an ideal sense, we'd like to take learners from a learning experience, we'd like to take them as high up that pyramid as possible, obviously, so that opportunity to practice it's a bit more than just practice, or can be, depends on the type of content. But if it's well-developed content, it really starts to branch into that creation space, which you would do in real life. You're really creating, you're taking the knowledge you've learned and you're creating something with it. And as you know, from a learning point of view, that's probably the most powerful thing you can do. I just want to make that point. But yep,
next, I think. Very good point. Yes. Next poll question.
So this will help us shape things a little bit when you talk through these lines. It should be good.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Looks like there's so far, a reasonable amount of experience.
Okay.
Currently using or have used VR for learning. It's great.
Likely to in the next 12 months. Yeah.
Yep. It's looking very positive.
So yeah. It's about 50 on the currently using, maybe around the 30s, likely to use in the next 12, and sort of 17, 20 for the interest. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, that's
excellent.
great.
Thanks for that, guys. All right, so I'll jump in now. So as Ben said, my name's Philip. I'm a psychologist by background. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at Facilitate, and I'll take you through the main elements of creating a VR solution. So I will preface this that this isn't exhaustive, as you can imagine, for a webinar. There are probably a few other factors that you need to dig down a little bit, but certainly at a reasonable level, we're going to cover the most important bits and the way they interconnect to create that path to value. Because as Ben said, there's a lot of potential in VR. We know it has all these abilities that are quite unique as far as learning technology goes. But we often talk to clients and they know that and they can see that, but they're still not quite sure how to access that, how to find that path in their organisational context to creating that value. So that's really what this is going to go through. So you can see the three main elements there. I just want to talk briefly a bit about them at a high level, and then we'll go into each one in more detail in the context of an example of a client. So one thing to note is, first, just take a step back. The three areas really are the content, the VR content. So we've talked about this. There's those three flavors that Ben already mentioned. So this is the experience that the learner will actually engage with. We've got the platform, or rather, let's go to the hardware. So the hardware is fairly self-explanatory. You need VR headsets. There are, again, a couple of flavors with them, but they go together with the content. So that bit's fairly straightforward. What's maybe not as well understood is the platforms, and they kind of act like the glue. They can connect the two together in meaningful ways. They can provide integrations to things like LMSs or advanced analytics engine. If you're doing eye tracking and stuff, and you want to look at learner behaviour in more detail, you'd almost inevitably need another platform to plug in to deal with that data in some way. So they're the three main elements that you'll need to consider. So just the points on the left there, they're interdependent, as I've kind of already alluded to. So a classic example is content and hardware. So if you want a really high quality simulation that, for instance, allows you to practice very fine motor control skills, say for a surgical task or something like that, and you want really high-end graphics, chances are you probably need a specific headset to allow you to do that, one that has very accurate tracking, and that it can represent very high quality, high fidelity graphics. So there's a dependency there. So you can't obtain that content and then go and buy an off-the-shelf hard headset and expect the two to work. Another one, as I mentioned, is with the platforms. So if you want to do advanced analytics, say on where people look within a certain scene and what that could mean, you almost inevitably need to bake that into the content. So then you're providing prompts for people to look around, and you can say compare between where an expert looks and where a novice looks. But you then also need a platform to analyze that data that comes out of the headset that will do that tracking for you. It very rarely will it come with, in a way that makes sense, that's human readable. So again, they are, all these three, they are interdependent in some ways. Another example is content and platform. So if you want to create your own content, such as using our self-authoring or other platforms out there, that will obviously dictate the type of content you can create, as Ben already alluded to. The other one is that all of these have varying levels of quality and cost. So as with everything, you can buy a Toyota Corolla or you can buy a Rolls Royce. The same goes for hardware, pretty much for content as well. And platforms may be lesser extent, but certainly content and hardware, you can spend as much or as little as you want within reason. And we'll talk a little bit about that. The other one is flexibility. So especially with content, this is relatively important. So a lot of custom-made content may often not be very flexible in that if you find a policy or process changes in 2, 3, 6 months' time and you need to amend the training that you've created for it, you'll often find you won't be able to do that yourself. You'll have to go back to that development agency that might come at an hourly rate. Alternatively, you can bake those sort of changes in, but that's something to consider as well. The last one really is fast evolving. So we're really at the cutting edge of technology, and the platforms are evolving very quickly. The content is evolving very quickly, and the hardware is probably the biggest driver of it all. So as the hardware improves, the headsets get lighter, batteries last longer, easier to use. They can have better quality graphics and interactions. The content comes up along with it. Okay, so content creators are maximizing the utility of the hardware. So that's the main elements. Let's go to the next one, Tessa. So I'll talk through each one of these in just a slight bit more detail before we go to the example. So Ben already mentioned the three main options here. So with self-authoring, we'll start on the left. So the main benefits there are flexibility. So when you create content yourself, you're free to edit it and change it and create new content as much as you have capacity to do. It is limited in some extents to the type of content you can create. So as I was alluding to with the example of the really high quality simulation, to teach surgical skills or something, it's very likely that you can't create that sort of experience yourself. You're going to need software coders that can code in Unity, etc., or another 3D engine to create that for you. So that's with self-authoring. There are a couple other bits, and we'll sort of unpack them as we go through. The next one off the shelf is probably one we're seeing a lot of interest in at the moment because just of the simplicity. You simply buy a piece of content and it'll be generic to a certain task, like Ben said, manual handling, fire extinguishers. Safety is a big one, so you'll get it working at heights, those sorts of things, or you'll get curriculum mapped educational content. So STEM content or, certain areas like that. And you can buy that and you can plug that in, so to speak, potentially via a platform or directly onto the headset. Again, we'll talk about that. And then that's ready to go. There's nothing else that's needed. So there's no internal capacity that you really need. And the cost can be relatively competitive as well. But you're locked into that content. You can't change it. You have to continually license it. And you are sort of limited to what's produced, and oftentimes it will be generic lower level learning, which can be fine. But if your use case is something in interpersonal skills, say in leadership, emotional intelligence, something like that, there is some off the shelf content. But as you start to get more specific to your organization and more specific to a certain use case, the off the shelf starts to peter out. The options start to limit out a little bit. So that's where you'd move on to the one on the far right, which is custom made. So as it suggests, you can have anything you want at any quality you want, as I alluded to earlier. You can, generally starting, well, it really depends on, but simulations, you might be looking 20, 30K, that can go all the way up to hundreds of thousands if you really want a whole suite of simulations and really great graphics. So you can really spend as much as you want on that. Probably out of all of them, custom made is most likely the most expensive, least flexible, most time consuming. Off the shelf is certainly the quickest. You can just buy it if they have what you want. Probably on par, maybe slightly more expensive than self-authoring platform. But with the platform, you get that almost infinite flexibility. So that's content. Let's move on to what's next. I think we've got hardware. Yep. Okay, so as I said, they're interdependent. So depending on what type of content you're wanting to use, you'll need a certain piece of hardware. So the ones on the left there, headsets are tethered. I think for most of the audience, they're probably familiar with this, given the poll feedback. So I'll move fairly quickly with this. As you'd be aware, if you want high quality graphics, you need a tethered headset that basically has a cord that runs to a computer, and the computer runs the graphical processing and the processing of the content. in a sense. So that means you then need a computer as well as a headset and generally some other bits and pieces. More complex, more costly, but you're getting obviously a really very high quality experience as well. Most of our customers, and I think where the market's probably heading certainly in the next few years, is the standalone area. So these headsets do all the graphical processing inside, so they have a lower graphical ability. And obviously they have a limited battery life as well because they're not plugged in. But you don't have the requirement for a computer, and there's the freedom of not having cords, which is obviously quite valuable. So within those the standalones, we've got the main players here. These are the market-leading headsets. I won't go into too much detail with these, but suffice to say, again, they come in different levels of quality, I think it's fair to say. And again, the price point as well. So we'll just, this slide really is quite busy, but it's not, we don't need to go through. This is just for your reference as a takeaway. The only thing I want to point out really is the bottom row, the price row. So you can see here the Oculus Quest is probably one of the most competitive there. The Pico Neo is $699, but you can see they go up to sort of varying between $699 and US and 2000 for the Vive Focus 3. So that's the Vive Focus 3, very much a premium headset. You do get a lot for your money. Whether it's worth it, whether it's necessary for your use case, that's what we'll try and unpack a little bit as we move forward. Certainly not, but it may be an option as well.
So Phil, I'll just jump in.
Please.
The Quest 2 price there as well, that was for the Oculus for Business edition. So
yes.
It's actually, it's considerably cheaper, I think, $5 thereabouts in Australian dollars. Excellent.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So really very much a bit of an option there for you to choose from. Okay, so the last one, platform. So there are a couple of flavors to this. I think the one that's probably worth tackling first are the VR creator platforms. So as we've said, the if required. So this is the interdependence I was talking about. If you choose to go with self-author content, or you might do a blended approach, and a lot of clients do. They might buy a little bit of off the shelf, but they'll do a lot of their own in-house specific, organization-specific stuff on a creator platform. But anyway, if you go with that, then that's obviously a requirement. You'll need that. They come in a variety of flavors. We won't dive into too much detail here, but it is dependent largely on the type of content that you want to create. The modality of the VR content. So you have, broadly speaking, you have CGI, created content, computer generated imagery. So these are your simulations. Okay, this is where it looks like a computer game. You go into a virtual environment. You can often pick up objects and manipulate them, et cetera, et cetera. That's what most people who've had a VR experience will probably know and love. So there are very few platforms that are user-friendly enough for the average L&D person to create a full-on simulation, hence why that's generally either off the shelf or in custom made. And as soon as you step down from a full-on simulation, you start to get some options. So in Facilitate, for example, we've got what's called micro simulations. So they are individual 3D models to which you can add interactions and you can manipulate them in certain ways that they become like a mini version of a simulation that the person can interact with. You've got 360-degree imagery-based content. So this is where you film with a 360-degree camera, either a photo or a video. You can then take that base asset, video or photo, and you can add elements to it, interactive elements. So that's where you can create your virtual tours that some of you may have seen. That's big in real estate and virtual tourism now. You can go to the Eiffel Tower and you can click on different teleportation spots and it takes you around the site. So that's another modality. Then you've got some blended bits in between where you might, as part of looking at those experiences, you might still want to come together and do some collaborative work. So you might want to sit into a classroom together where you can all have avatars, and the learners and the facilitator can all talk to one another, and you can have a debrief after, say, doing a simulation or doing an experience in 360 and to add to the learning. So the platforms will vary in what they offer. Some will offer a broad spectrum of those different modalities, and some will only focus on, say, 360, and some will only focus on 3D models, or others will almost be just collaboration tools where all you can really do is come together draw on a whiteboard, maybe show some slides, and that's it. So again, what you require will be a little bit dependent, but they're the creator platforms. The next one is the content dissemination platform. So as the title suggests, it's once you've created content or bought content or had custom-made content done for you, how do you get it out to your people? So let's say you've got a distributed workforce, you've got a couple of headsets in different sites, and you want to make sure that everyone has this training for the month of May, everyone has this particular training. So how are you deploying that? And then how are you tracking that everyone's done that? So normally with e-learning, we'd have that all as part of our LMS. So what you need to do is either look at obtaining a content dissemination platform itself, of which there aren't really that many, but a lot of creator platforms, including ours, have that functionality built in, so you can distribute content through it, and you can do a lot of tracking through it as well. And you can often integrate with your learning management system, so it can send data out saying Joe Bloggs did that training at that time and his score was 10 out of 10, etc. Yeah, so that's that one. So guys, by the way, we didn't mention at the beginning, if there are any questions, just write them in the chat. Can we write them in the chat? I think we can, yeah. Please feel free to do that, and we'll get to them. So the last one is a hardware management platform. So these are also known as MDMs, so mass device management. So essentially, this is just for controlling the hardware. So if you're in a large organization and you have a large fleet of headsets, and especially if they are distributed geographically across different locations, whoever's responsible for maintaining those devices, so it might be your IT department, it may be your operational department, I don't know, but their job is going to be very hard to control all those devices. So as we do with computers in large organizations, we have a centralized management platform that allows IT or whoever's responsible to track the status of the headsets, make sure they're updated, make sure that certain software is installed on them at the right times, and all those, and troubleshooting those sorts of issues. So they are sort of the three main platforms that you probably want to consider, certainly early in the phase. As you get more advanced, you might look at things like dedicated analytics platforms that I was talking about that take certain user behavior within an experience, and they turn that into something human readable. But we won't go into that into too much detail. It's probably a little bit more advanced. Okay, so that's that one. Thanks, Tessa. So just introducing the VR guidance tool that Ben alluded to. So we're putting together a free online tool that's going to allow you to basically uncover the things that we're uncovering here. So which is the best type of content or combination and hardware and platform for your organization and your use case. So essentially it'll just ask you a series of questions. What do you want to do? And it'll provide you with a series of recommendations. So we're hoping to get that up and running soon, and we'll let everyone know once that's ready. Cool. I think we've got another poll question. Yeah. So if we want to throw this one out. So now that you've got a little bit of an idea of a learning solution as a whole, which some of you, probably most of you already had, just keen to get a sense of what people's appetite is for doing this. So a lot of the clients that we talk to, it's probably a little bit of a mix. Some start sort of thinking that they'll outsource everything, but then end up changing. So what are we getting here? 50% internal, 25 for the other two. Yeah, okay.
Again, a bit of a mix.
Again, no, that's right. Thanks for that, guys. Appreciate it. So this might give you a bit of an idea of whether that internal development of that capability is something you want to approach if we go through it. So let's go into the example. So we'll put all this into a bit of context with an example for client here. So fairly straightforward. Organization X, they want to standardize and improve a lot of their training. So a lot of it is currently e-learning heavy. There's some practical components that have to be done. 2,500 staff roughly dispersed across metro centres, and around about 100 learning instances per month. So That's a reasonable volume. So the learning instances is, I guess, in a sense, to say that a learner puts on a headset and goes in and does some sort of training. That's what we're calling a learner instance. Yeah. Okay, so they started with a pilot project focused on inductions to sites across Australia. So you see they've got some different sites, and then they wanted to expand to other learning areas, so beyond site inductions. So let's have a look at how they tackled these 3 cases. Thanks, Tessa. So these are the content questions. So yeah, feel free to have a look at these. I'll sort of run through them in terms of the context of the organisation, but there are a few more that we ask in the guidance tool as well. So we go to the next slide. I'll talk through the answers here. So do you have internal content creators? They said they did. They had some L&D and some ops people that they had some capacity to do that. The next question is the ability to change the content. So this is this flexibility I was alluding to. You don't get this with off-the-shelf content. You get what you buy and that's it. Custom, you can certainly get it changed, but it'll come at a cost. So they were unsure about this. They thought there might be, but don't we let that there. The third one might seem a little bit random, but the reason this is asked is if you are looking for something that requires very precise motor skills, you almost inevitably will need a very high quality simulation, which kind of rules out the self-creation part of it, and it'll probably almost. There is some off-the-shelf stuff out there, but again, very specific to a certain use case. So if you want to teach a precise motor skill in I don't know, maybe in an engineering context or something like that, you're almost inevitably going to have to go down the custom route. So they didn't have any of that, so that was fine. And then the collaborative synchronous or individual asynchronous learning experiences. So the collaborative obviously meaning that learners come together and they can talk, whereas the other one is more that e-learning style where people can go on their own time into the headset and they can just work through the content. So the organisation wanted both. So the content suggestions that we had here, the 2 options really were the self-authoring, and they were looking at inductions. So 360 video-based site tours made the most sense. There's no point in creating a CGI environment of each of the different sites because that would be very, very costly and time consuming when you can film it in 360, which it'll be photorealistic and very simple to do. The other one is to go custom made content, again, using 360 based site tools, but just not doing it themselves. So they would get a videographer in and they would stitch that together and they would add elements as opposed to doing it themselves. So. Okay, cool. So, we just got a question. What was that? Should we deal with that one now or?
Yep, so that's, if specialized tools are needed, such as surgical, is there tool makers for such hardware?
Tool makers. So, what does that mean?
Not quite sure.
Not 100% sure. Do you mean as in? I might just get you to was it Brian? Yeah, I might just get you to clarify that. For the controllers. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, good question. So it depends. We can do hand tracking now. So depending on the quality, again, if you're getting really high quality trackers and high quality headsets and algorithms that go with it, then you probably do away with the controllers altogether and you have tracking of the fingers. So then you can get that fine motor control through that alone. So that comes with obviously a little bit of complexity. In terms of other controllers, I'm not aware of anything specialized, but I'm not across all the content that's out there. It may well be. Some mapping for accuracy. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I think you'd probably need a really high quality tracking, hand tracking and a hand tracking algorithm that goes with it. And that would all be part of the hardware in a sense. It's got to do with content a little bit as well, but a lot of it will come from the tracking ability of the headsets.
Yeah.
But there is stuff out there that can do that, I believe. Yeah, but certainly custom job, not something you'd be doing yourself. Okay, hardware questions. So, yep, let's go to the next slide, Tessa. We'll see how our client looked at these ones. So do you require a centralized way to manage headsets? So this is what I was saying. Not every organization does. If you've got 2 or 3 headsets and they're all, say, within one office, you probably don't need this. You can just have them all in one room, and that's the VR training room, and people can go in there. That's fine. These guys did. They had dispersed locations. So yes, they had the head office. IT wanted to be able to control the devices. You have a high volume of users sharing devices. So they said yes, because they only had one headset in each of the locations. And those 100 training instances were spread across the different locations. So you could be looking as many as, 10, 15 within a given week at any one location. So this comes down to a bit of a hygiene thing as well. So we recommended, as you'll see, a sterilisation station there for each one. The third one is an interesting one. So we do work with some clients, government, education, stuff like that. They have obviously some fairly strict IT, security, data and privacy policies. And you do have to be a little bit cognizant of that before you buy your hardware and to some extent your software, to be aware of what your requirements are. So if data storage needs to be within Australia, et cetera, you just need to do your due diligence to make sure that's the case. So these guys were just a standard small medium business that didn't have anything beyond those sort of standard requirements. And then the last one, again, as I said, you can spend more or less on hardware. And the question here is really, do you want a premium headset, or that you can buy like the Quest, for example, which is, compared to the Focus 3, is a slightly lower end device, but it will still do what these guys wanted it to do. They only wanted the inductions and then moving on to maybe a little bit of off-the-shelf manual handling stuff later on. But they said they wanted a high quality and they had the budget. So that was an option for them. So the outcome there was a mass device management platform was required. Some headsets come with it. So the HTC Focus 3 comes with a management platform that allows you to do that. But whereas the Pico Neo headset, they don't come with that. You have to subscribe to a management and MDM solution separately. And then we also recommended a UV sterilisation station. So this is like Cleanbox is one of the ones that manufacture that. You can put a headset in and within, I think, 90 seconds, it sterilises the entire thing. So this is for high volume usage of one headset in a workplace setting. We also recommended, of course, a standalone headset. So they're not running a really high quality simulation, as we alluded to. So they don't need, cables and all that complexity. Cool. So next slide. So lastly were the platform questions. So next slide. Yep, thank you. So they did want to create their own learning content, and they said they had some capacity. This is an interesting one. This is sort of the offline ability. The question is, do you require learning experience to be accessible without an internet connection? So we get a lot of these requests from clients that have remote sites. So they do have internet, but it may come and go throughout the week. So they need an option that's not going to stop the learning process only because internet's a bit dodgy on the day. So these guys required that as well. And a non-VR headset-based alternative. So essentially, the only real ones here are computer, or you can shoehorn some VR content into a mobile phone. But you are, with both of those options, you are obviously compromising on the immersion of it. So you are no longer looking around and being in that environment. And getting all the emotional responses that you get from that, which again can be very powerful from a learning point of view. You are looking at a screen, but still probably a step up, well, definitely a step up from e-learning. So yeah, these guys required that, but they said at the computer level was fine. So, and the centralized content administration platform. So they said all they required were completion records. So they didn't really care too much about scores or analytics or anything fancy. They just wanted to know, did Joe do his induction training or not? And same with the reporting. They only needed the completion reporting. So what the recommendation there was, a self-authoring platform that has LMS integration and offline capability and a desktop version parallel to a headset. The other option they could do is, if they buy the content, they could just get a content hosting platform, again, that has LMS integration offline and desktop. as well. So they're the two main options. Cool. So let's just wrap all that up. Here's the outcome for this client altogether. So the content, they were going to do it themselves, learning and development, and together with ops, we're going to film some of the virtual tours, 360-degree videos on their own camera, about $1,000 from JB Hi-Fi's, prosumer grade, which is sufficient for what most organisations want. They then use the self-authoring platform to add those interactive elements and make the content much more engaging. That was a subscription-based platform, and they had LMS integration, as I've alluded to, and the offline and the computer-based alternative. That was all part of the self-authoring platform. In the end, it was Pico Neos instead of the HTCs that they went with, 6 by at roughly about 1,200 Australian per unit. They had Arbor XR, which was the mass device management or the hardware device management system. And they had the Cleanbox UV cleaning station at each of the sites, so they could pop the headsets in there once one person's finished, and then the learning could continue that way. So I hope that's sort of meshed together some of the options. Look, there are many flavors to this. They could have bought, or they couldn't have bought site specific because it's very contextualized, obviously. But once they move on to the working at height stuff, all that stuff, they could potentially mix this up with buying some off-the-shelf content as well, and not make it themselves if they don't want. They could have bought more expensive headsets. There's a couple of different flavors here, but I hope it gives you a bit of an idea of how these three elements combine to create a path to value for this particular client. I think we've just got a bit of summary and one more poll question. So if you've got any more questions that have come out of that, please, now is probably the time to start sending them through. So just in summary, always start with the use case or the learning objective. So there's a bit of a risk because it's really cool cutting edge technology to start with the technology. Or what headsets are we going to get? Just as you do with all basic learning design, start with what it is you're trying to teach. Work up from that. So does that mean that we need what domain is it in? Is it just procedural knowledge, just facts and that? Is it a motor skill that you really want to teach? You need people to be able to move their hands in a certain way. Or is it an interpersonal skill? So you're talking affective stuff, emotions, reading other people's emotions. They're very different learning domains. So start with that, move up like that. That will then tell you which VR modality or content medium is most appropriate. So with 360 content, 360 video, you're getting very, very realistic visuals, so you can see people's expressions very real, but you can't touch objects. You can't pull something out and have it drop. So if you're teaching a motor skill, 360 may not be so good. So always start with a use case and work up. Consider all three elements. As I've said, they're interdependent. You can't go out and get the cheapest headset and then get a custom built simulation, because it probably won't run on it. And then you'll have headsets that won't work. So think about all of it before you sort of commit to any one of them. And keep an eye out for the guidance tool that we'll put out. So hopefully, our aim there is to really support people to cut through some of the complexity and just get some of the early questions around VR answered. So that's really it for me. I've got one last question for you guys, if you'd indulge me. I just wanted to get a bit of a sense after all that I've gone through of what you see as the barriers, if any, to developing the capability to deliver VR learning. So, after this, we're going to Q&A. If we've got any.
Yeah, at the moment it looks like
mixed bag again.
Yeah.
3. Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah.
Mixed bag.
Yeah. So kind of a bit of everything here.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. There's pretty much some responses in each category there, fairly even.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, look, I think that's probably quite reflective of where we see the market as well. We, a lot of people come to us, and they see no barriers. The use case is clear for them. They see the value, and it's just a matter of how do we do this now. It's not a why anymore. But it does vary a lot. So
yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, I hope that's helped a little bit towards that. please, if there are any more questions, then text them through and we can go up them.
Yeah.
How are we doing for time?
Yeah, I'm just conscious of time because I think we planned for 45 minutes, but
45, sorry, a little bit over there. Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, we can probably wrap it up there if there aren't any questions.
I think you covered everyone's potential questions. So we
can receive a recording.
We can share the recording. It will be on our website. Probably in the next few days. And if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to send them through. You can find us through our website or LinkedIn.
And when we launch the guidance tool as well, we'll probably reach out. We'll put a bit of a call out for people to have a bit of a drive and see what value you get from it, and that'd be good to get some feedback there as well. So
definitely. Please let us know if you're keen to use that tool once it's available.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day, and